Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Dark Tower YouTube. This is where we're taking a deep psychological dive into the magic, the mystery, and the metaphysics of Stephen King's magnum opus, The Dark Tower. We're back with another Man in Black episode. This is part 2, and there's going to be more parts. I don't know how many, because there's a lot to say about this man. We started talking about who he is in terms of what are his names, his aliases. What do we know about them in terms of, are they all the same person? Are they different people? What's going on? Because it's all over the place in the books in terms of, last episode we looked at the Gunslinger original and the Gunslinger revised and just compared what Stephen King was saying about this character in both of those books. We're going to continue today with Drawing of the Three, The Wastelands, and Wizard in Glass, and look at what do we learn about the Man in Black in these 3 books. And I think we're going to have more episodes after that. Maybe one more, maybe more. I don't know. Maybe we just do this forever because there's a lot going on in here. And my name is Michelle McEwen. I am your host. There are spoilers if you didn't figure that out already, so do not listen to this if you have not read the entire series, The Dark Tower. Once you do, come back and join us in our tower junkie-ness. My Dark Tower friend Ash is helping me with this series, and she is back with me today. Hello. Are you ready for part 2 of...
I am ready.
Nice. Like 50 parts to this one. And we'll see. We're hoping to get through those 3 books, actually. We'll see how we do. We're going to jump right into it. Actually, let's do a little recap of what we learned last time. So it actually winds up being 2 different things that we learned from the original Gunslinger and the revised Gunslinger. So, Ash, in the original Gunslinger, at the end of the day, what do we know about the Man in Black in terms of who he is and isn't?
We learned that he is Walter, who is different from Martin. 2 separate guys. So that's the unrevised edition.
Yes. And we learned that the ageless stranger was Marilyn.
Yes.
In the revised.
Yeah, and he's one of the minions of the tower and in the unrevised as well.
Yes. In the revised edition, Walter is Martin, and he shapeshifted, or so it seems, based on everything that we read. They are one and the same person, and the ageless stranger is no longer Marilyn, but Legion.
Yes.
And we don't know too much more about that figure, but we're going to learn things about him today that don't make any sense to what we learned, really. Mm-hmm. That's okay, because Stephen King wrote this over 30 years, and so as we go forward, we're going to see that the books that are closest to the unrevised Gunslinger have the story that he had at that point, kind of continuing on. And somewhere along the way, he shifted gears into something else, and then when he revised the Gunslinger, it matched up with that. So that's why it's confusing, and you're always seeing people arguing about it, because everybody's right, probably.
Right.
All right, so the drawing of the 3. I want to talk about the arguments that King makes at the beginning of these books, because these are going to throw us for a loop almost every single time that we look at them. Mm-hmm. So King writes, this is starting the drawing of the 3. We know that Roland was forced to an early trial of manhood after discovering that his mother had become the mistress of Martin, a much greater sorcerer than Walter, who, unknown to Roland's father, is Martin's ally. We know Martin has planned Roland's discovery, expecting Roland to fail and to be sent west. We know that Roland triumphs in his test. This is like 2 truths and a lie, because I'm reading his sentences and he's like, we know. And I'm like, okay, we know some of these things, but do we know that Martin is a much greater sorcerer than Walter?
Right.
Do we know that?
I don't know. I don't think... I feel like we did not learn that. I mean, unless he's trying to say, like, because he was part of Martin's entourage that would mean that he was below him, which might make him lesser. But, you know, it's never like stated outright in the Gunslinger Unrevised.
That's right. It isn't. Oh, there's your cat. That's so cute. Is she going to climb up the bookshelf and knock us off cats are very magical creatures.
Yes.
We know that. Mm-hmm. So Martin, I guess if Walter were part of Martin's entourage, then yes, it would stand to reason. But there's nothing in the Gunslinger that actually tells us that. I mean, I guess Stephen King knows because he wrote the book, but he didn't share his secrets with us on that one. And go ahead.
I will say I was looking through some of the, trying to pull quotes and things, and the author's note at the end of the final, like, Dark Tower book, King wrote that these related writings include the ever-growing synopsis known by the quaint old word argument at the beginning of each of the first 5 volumes, and afterwards, most totally unnecessary and some actually embarrassing in retrospect. So he probably also doesn't super agree with all of the arguments by the end of the series, it sounds like. So, just thought that I would, throw that out there. So that's maybe part of it.
Yeah, good point. If he's saying, I don't know what I wrote, it's not all equally great. And we're like, yeah, that's a little weird. And for this particular issue, makes things a little more confusing than they already are. So that's great. And then this says, who unknown to Roland's father is Martin's ally. So, but this makes sense because at the end of the Unrevised Gunslinger, they're 2 separate people. So at the beginning of the drawing of the 3, they're 2 separate people.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. We get to an alias of the man in black called Flagg, Randall Flagg, whom, if you have read I was going to say The Shining, but that's not right, The Stand, then we know Randall Flagg is a big character in that, but he also plays a part in The Eyes of the Dragon. I don't know if Flagg shows up anywhere else. Do we know?
I don't think that he is like a main character of any others for sure, but I'm not positive. He might show up in the way that sometimes King will like reference on offhand like some of his other works, but I don't think that he is a main character in any of the others.
I don't think so either. And he had written both The Stand and The Eyes of the Dragon when he wrote the drawing of the 3. So Flagg was on his mind. And so I think it's cool that when you read through in chronological order, then you can pick up on all the little Easter eggs, we'll call them, but it's just King kind of weaving things together as he's writing. I mean, that man is a machine, and he was turning out multiple novels per year.
Yeah.
I think he still is, but especially in the 80s, it was like just massive novels that everybody knows and most people have read, just one after the other, including this one in 1987, I believe it was published. Mm-hmm. So we get this excerpt. One of these men had been a creature the gunslinger believed to be a demon himself, a creature that pretended to be a man and called itself Flagg. He had seen him only briefly, and that had been near the end, as chaos and the final crash approached his land. Hot on his heels had come 2 young men who looked desperate and yet grim, men named Dennis and Thomas. These 3 had crossed only a tiny part of what had been a confused and confusing time in the gunslinger's life, but he would never forget seeing Flagg change a man who had irritated him into a howling dog. He remembered that well enough. Then there had been the man in black, and there had been Martin. Martin, who seduced his mother while his father was away. Martin, who had tried to author Roland's death, but had instead authored his early manhood. Martin, who he suspected he might meet again before he reached the tower or at it. All right, so we get the flag tie-in, and Dennis and Thomas, if you've read The Eyes of the Dragon, are characters in that book, so he's just kind of tying that world into Roland's, which is, I think, the first time that happens in this series. Although we did have The Shining come into, I know that's in the Drawing of the Three as well. So nothing in Gunslinger that ties these worlds together.
I don't think so. I think the only thing is so Eyes of the Dragon and the original Gunslinger were written just a couple years apart. And so I do wonder if at this time we didn't have Roland's last name or anything. So I do wonder if maybe he was thinking that Roland was like the King Roland in Eyes of the Dragon at first, and then changed his mind later. But I'm not positive.
That's interesting. But I think we have Roland Deschain in the Gunslinger.
We have Deschain?
Yeah, I think so. Now you're making me doubt that, but I'm pretty sure we do.
Okay.
Even Deschain. I think so, because I think I remember talking about that last name in the Gunslinger videos, but
okay.
Now we'll have to go check it out. But regardless, the fact that the first name of the king in that book, which I forgot, is King Roland, and we have Roland, the hero in this series, not a coincidence. Yeah, there's definitely just overlap in terms of a name of greatness. And I made a video all about the name Roland and where that comes from. If you want to check that out, I'll link it somewhere so you can watch it.
And also, in the Eyes of the Dragon, it is set in Deschain, which is one of the baronies in, is it in New, is it, it's in Midworld, I don't remember which region.
It's in Garland, I believe, or next to Garland, but it's definitely in Midworld. World, I think, is where they're at.
Yeah, because it's like in the inner baronies. And so Roland could just be, I mean, we see it all the time with like royalty. They'll recycle names, that have significant meaning to that family. So it's very possible that that's just like a royal name,
Yeah. But it's cool because when we're reading, I had read The Eyes of the Dragon before I read The Drawing of the Three. So when I read The Drawing of the Three, I was like, wow, what? Oh, okay. I know those people and this is cool. And this is where there's a whole debacle of people who want to fight over if you need to read these books before you read the series, or if you do read them, which one should you read, and then if you do read them, when should you read them? And it's a whole we could do a whole seminar on that. But you never read the Eyes of the Dragon, right?
Not yet. No.
Do you feel like you're missing so much because you didn't read that book, reading through the series?
I don't think so, no. I mean, I've read like the synopsis and stuff, just looking to see character threads, especially with like the Man in Black, Randall Flagg. But I don't feel like I have missed anything too significant. I definitely am planning on reading it, and I'm sure that there will be, little Easter eggs and things that I know from the series proper, but I don't think that it's super necessary.
No, I don't think it is either. It's fun and cool, but it also, if it just happened organically, like if you were reading Stephen King as he published these books and as he was tying things together, it was cool and fun. But if I had the chance to read them all together at once, that's what I would do, because some of these, let's take, how long is it going to take you to read it? That's a 1,000-page novel. And
The Stand, the uncut and unrevised one is like, 1,400 pages or something? Mm-hmm. So I do think that, again, it's not necessary, but I do think that especially if you have read The Stand, that helps when we get into Wizard and Glass, because, we do see, like, Captain Trips, like, has decimated that world, and then we also see, that's when Flag shows up as Flag instead of just the Man in Black. Sorry, getting ahead a little bit, but I'm just I do think that it's not necessary, but it does help set up sort of like the background when we get into Wizard and Glass.
Yeah, I agree. That one, I'd also happened to have read that when I read Wizard and Glass, and
yes, me too.
So this tie-in was kind of like, oh wow, that's cool. I guess they share a world. But when you get the Stan tie-in, you're like, oh holy shit! Like this is a kind of a plot point.
Yes,
you don't. Stephen King tells you what you need to know.
Yeah,
tells you what you need to know. And if you just read what we just read, and you didn't know about Eyes of the Dragon, you wouldn't lose anything. You would just be like, oh, okay, he knows him from another place. So anyway, we're getting off track, but just to say that's pretty much the reference. When people are like, you have to read the Eyes of the Dragon before you read the Drawing of the Three, that's it. There's a character. There's no other tie-ins between the two. At least I haven't read the Eyes of the Dragon in a while, but I would say that's about it. And that's about it for the Drawing of the Three. We don't really get the Man in Black. We get the Man in Black inside of Roland's head, the voice of the Man in Black, which is Roland's stained consciousness, as we like to think about, but not the man himself, except for that one reference. I don't think there's even any other ones in there.
I don't think so, no. I think at one point, King specifically says that it's not the actual Man in Black, and it is just in Roland's mind. Because I know that there are some theories that it might actually be him, communicating telepathically, but I'm pretty sure that King makes it kind of clear that it's just Roland's mind.
He does, and whichever, I don't remember which video that is, where we cover that in my book club version of the Drawing of the Three. I read specifically, here's where King says, this is Roland's, and that's why I said the stained conscience. Those are the words that he uses. And when I read that, I was like, aha, he's telling us what's going on here. So that's that for the Drawing of the Three.
And at this time, just to sort of also recap, at this time, Roland believes that the Man in Black is dead, because at the end of the palaver in the Gunslinger, he wakes up, appears 10 years older, and there is a skeleton in front of him. So at this point, he and the reader assumes that he is dead.
Good point. And I guess the other thing I wanted to bring up, but I forgot, was King connected those three together. So he connected together Flag and the Man in Black and Martin all in that paragraph. So he does a triplet there. And then he does a triple beat with Martin, saying Martin, Martin, Martin. And he says he suspected he might meet again before he reaches the tower or at it. So that's King kind of like, I don't know what's going to happen. And King, that's how he writes, but he's kind of setting that idea up where in the Wizard and Glass, which we'll get to, that's who Roland is talking to, Martin. So we'll see when we get there. But Wastelands comes first, so let's do that next. And we have another argument from Stephen King at the beginning of the Wastelands, which makes us feel super confused. Do you want to read that?
Sure. So I think that this is in the afterword.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're good. So he says, that puzzling figure Walter, called the Wizard or the Ageless Stranger. It is with this terrible and enigmatic figure that Robert Browning begins his epic poem, Childe Roland to the Dark Tower Came, writing of him. My first thought was, he lied in every word, that hoary cripple with malicious eye, askance to watch the working of his lie on mine, and mouth scarce able to afford suppression of the glee that pursed and scored its edge, at one more victim gained thereby. It is this malicious liar, this dark and powerful magician, who holds the true key to Endworld and the Dark Tower, for those courageous enough to grasp it, and for those who are left.
Okay. So he calls Walter, he says that Walter is called the wizard or the ageless stranger. And that doesn't match up with what has happened before in either of the
In
Gunslinger.
either, nope. And this was written in 1991, so this is before he revised it. But even with the unrevised, it does not match up.
It just doesn't, because we
No.
know that the ageless stranger is, and Walter is the one telling Roland who the ageless stranger is in both of those. And in the first one, he says it's Marilyn, and the second one, he says it's Legion, but he never says it me. He doesn't do that.
And it
So,
doesn't really allude to that either.
Not at all.
No, at all.
No. So, I don't know what else to say about that.
Again, this is one of the afterwards, and King later wrote that they're a little bit embarrassing, so that might be part of why, is that, they just don't exactly match up with the lore that he was building within the actual series.
Yeah, that's right. The next thing he talks about is that Walter is the ageless stranger, is the hoary cripple with malicious eye who lies in every word. So he's saying that is what inspired him. So that's important. So we can say, at least we know that that character in the poem, Child Roland to the Dark Tower Came, is hefty on King's mind.
Yes.
And he's going to say, this is a big deal kind of person, the ageless stranger who is Walter. No, it's not, but it was a big inspiration for him. So we like that he tells us about that there.
Yes, yeah. And I mean, we definitely see it, especially in the palaver, like how sort of giddy he is. So we definitely see that, like, glee at being that malicious character.
Yes. Sorry, that is my dog pawing through the bone box to get the perfect bone. She's going to come now and chew right next to the microphone. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're going to do? Let's see. Okay. Okay. So it's just confusing. It just doesn't match. And then he changes his mind about, this isn't him changing his mind necessarily, but we get more information about Child Roland to the Dark Tower Came in Dark Tower 7, The Dark Tower. And Roland has an idea himself about who that character is. So they meet Joe Collins, Dandelo, I don't know how you say that. And that's who Roland thinks the hoary cripple is. And I think Stephen King leaves the poem for them.
I think so. And I know that it is at the full poem is at the end of the Dark Tower book as well, like for reference. So probably.
He leaves it because Susanna and Roland are all that's left. And forgive me, my fellow Tower junkies, because I forget exactly how they get it. But I think he leaves it for Susanna, because he leaves the thing in the medicine cabinet.
Yes.
That all of that. So I think that's where it comes from.
Specifically, yeah.
I think that's where. And this is. Go ahead. I was just going to read what happened there.
Oh, I was just going to say. So we do get the reference to the quote unquote hoary cripple being potentially Ray as well. So I think that for sure that was like the main inspiration for the Man in Black. But then as these other characters pop up, he's taking those aspects and like putting them on other like main antagonists throughout the series.
Who did you say it was?
Ray, the witch in Wizard and Glass.
Oh, okay.
He thinks of that line specifically in the poem, and he's like, "Where is this poem from? I don't know, but this is the first thing that popped into my mind."
Yes, and I know a person named Rhea, and so that's how I say
okay. It. See, I know someone named Rhiannon, and they went by Ray, so that's how I assumed it was pronounced. Sorry, I don't know.
I just didn't know who you were talking about, and then I did.
Yeah, that's right. RHEA. Someone correct us in the comments, because I don't know how to say it.
All right, so Roland and Susanna have the poem Child Roland to the Dark Tower Came, and Roland is hoarse because he almost laughed himself to death. And he says, "Read the marked ones," he said hoarsely, "because I can only make out a word here and there, and I would know what they say, would know it very well." And I believe that's just pause. That was King marking, highlighting particular stanzas of the poem. That's what he's talking about. "Stanza the first," she said, then had to clear her throat. It was dry. Outside the wind howled, and the naked overhead bulb flickered in its fly-specked fixture. "My first thought was, he lied in every word, that hoary cripple with malicious eye, askance to watch the working of his lie on mine, and mouth scarce able to afford suppression of the glee that pursed and scored its edge, had one more victim gained thereby." "Collins," Roland said. "Whoever wrote that spoke of Collins as sure as King ever spoke of our quartet in his stories. He lied in every word. Aye, so he did." Roland's pretty sure who the ageless stranger is there.
Yeah.
Is he right?
It's just so confusing. It's just like another wrench thrown in, you know?
Yeah.
Especially because, like, in the arguments, he's straight up saying, like, this is the man in black. This is fun. And then they're like, just kidding, Collins? So,
I don't know.
do you believe that Collins could potentially be another, like, persona of the man in black? I didn't either. So that's why I was confused. Because, like, that's not how I read it. But I don't know.
I think so. We're at the 7th book at this point. So it's all up in the air by now in terms of whatever King wrote back in the unrevised Gunslinger and even in the Wastelands. That was still 13 years before he was writing this book. So it's really hard to say. Also, I would say, though, I think at some point in my journey so far, I've called into question the idea of Roland as being a reliable narrator and kind of saying, like, not always. And we can't just take what he's thinking to be the truth, because he is very skewed sometimes in the way he's thinking about the situation, looking at the situation, deciding what to do. He's definitely blind in some ways, not seeing what's going on. So I think his certainty here doesn't really mean shit ultimately when we know how Roland ends up.
Definitely.
All right, so that was just a fun little side journey there. We're going to get back to the Wastelands, and we have the quartet getting onto Blaine.
Yes.
And we had Jake and Roland kind of destroying the TikTok man, or so they thought, leaving him for dead, so they thought. But we get this great scene where we wake up with Andrew Quick and get a little bit of his past, which I think is really fun and interesting.
Yeah.
And we have the man in black coming through to gather him up and take him into his evil dark fold. So we get a lot of conversation here and information from King about the man in black. So we're going to read through piece by piece and talk about what do we learn about this character based on what he is saying and how that conversation is going and what King is pointing out to us. So do you want to read number 1?
Yes. Okay. So King writes, "The stranger standing in front of the hatch wore a short dark jacket belted at the waist, faded denim trousers, and old dusty boots. The boots of a countryman, a range rider, or a gunslinger, Andrew? The stranger asked and tittered. Who are you? The TikTok man asked.
I think that deserves a pause because of the pulling in of Gunslinger into the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Why is he dressed like a gun?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, King had already written The Stand, and in The Stand, Flag was also known as the Walkin' Dude, and this is kind of how he was dressed. So it's definitely tying in with that, but I do think it's interesting that he pulls the gunslinger specifically, and I wonder if that's just to mirror Roland, and or also like when we get into Wizard and Glass and see like the big coffin hunters, they're like exiled gunslingers, so we kind of there are threads that might be alluding to, but I think that it is mainly both to tie in Flag as Fanon and then also like juxtapose him with Roland.
Yes. I also think it's a good point to bring up where at the end of the Gunslinger, when we get our first glimpse of the Man in Black, and I didn't pull this out for the excerpt, but I've talked about this somewhere else, or maybe we even did, how they look.
I think in the shadow video.
I think we did too in one of these episodes where they look alike, the Man in Black and Roland. They don't look exactly alike, but they share similar features in terms of the color of their skin, the black hair, the blue eyes. I think somewhere in these he talks about blue-green eyes, so that's a little bit of a change, but it's like, why do they look so much alike? And now he's wearing cowboy boots. So we did a whole episode about the idea of the shadow archetype and how Roland and the Man in Black are kind of two sides of the same coin, much like Detta and Odetta were two sides of the same coin. And I think this is just more fuel to the fire to that argument that there's something bigger going on behind the scenes where King is writing this character, because otherwise, why make them look alike unless he wants us to start thinking about that deeply? Why have a character look at this man and think he's a gunslinger unless King wants us to think that about this character?
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going. So the TikTok man said, "Who are you?" "I'm a man of many handles, partner," the man said from inside the darkness of his hood. And although his voice was grave, TikTok heard laughter lurking just below the surface. "There's some that call me Jimmy and some that call me Timmy. Some that call me Handy and some that call me Dandy. They can call me loser or they can call me winner, just as long as they don't call me in too late for dinner." Anything there that we want to talk about?
I think obviously we're seeing him kind of play with the idea that he's a different person to everyone everywhere he shows up, and that he doesn't really care too much as long as he's able to do what he needs to do, I guess.
I think so too. He thinks it's funny too.
Yeah, it's like it's a joke to him. It's a prank, kind of, he's just having fun with it. Because obviously it would be fun to shapeshift. Like, take like the evil stuff out of it. That sounds fun as hell. You could just be whoever you want.
Yeah. Get up to no good, cause chaos, destroy worlds, blame it on somebody else, move on to the next version of yourself. If you wanted to move around like that, that's who this character is. And we made a point for that early on. I think the first video we made, and kind of landing on the idea that, and I think we're going to land there with this as well. This is a chaotic person who enjoys the chaos.
Just loves being a trickster.
All right, next one. You want to read the next one, number 3?
Yeah. Okay, so he continues. I have been called the ageless stranger, the man said. He began to walk toward Tick-Tock, and as he did, the man on the floor moaned and tried to scrabble backward. I have also been called Merlin or Marilyn, and who cares because I was never that one, although I never denied it either. I am sometimes called the magician, or the wizard, but I hope we can go forward together on more humble terms, Andrew, more human terms.
So he says, I've been called the ageless stranger. No, you weren't until King forgot maybe that you weren't that person, or I don't know, but maybe he has been. We don't know.
I mean, I think it's pretty clear that we can infer that we are not seeing all of the things that Flag does. He's conquering worlds, he's putting on all these different masks and personas, kind of. So maybe in some versions of this world or on other levels of the tower, he is referred to as the ageless stranger. And even though he knows that that's not him, same kind of idea with Merlin or Marilyn, like that's not him either, but he's taking the credit because it's fun.
Yes. The other thing I think is that the name the ageless stranger just occurred to me. We know that the man in black is in the loop and he's aware of it to some extent, that this is going to keep happening. So in that sense, he is ageless. And the stranger part is because he's taking a new name on every other book, or even multiple names in this book. So showing up differently to different people who maybe have met him before, like Martin and Walter, but he's a stranger to them. So it fits in that way.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Let's get back to this excerpt. He pushed back the hood, revealing a fair, broad face that was not, for all of its pleasant looks, in any way human. Large, hectic roses rode the wizard's cheekbones. His blue-green eyes sparkled with a gusty joy far too wild to be sane. His blue-black hair stood up in zany clumps like the feathers of a raven. His lips, lushly red, parted to reveal the teeth of a cannibal. Call me Fannin, the grinning apparition said. Richard Fannin. That's not exactly right, maybe, but I reckon it's close enough for government work. He held out a hand whose palm was utterly devoid of lines. What do you say, pard? Shake the hand that shook the world. Quick's entire consciousness had fused into one thought. I must get away from this beast that looks like a man. So a lot in there, and I jumped ahead and said, here is, just like at the end of the Gunslinger, here is King saying, these two men look alike, y'all. They share some physical characteristics in more than one way. So that has happened twice now in this series. So just pointing that out again to everybody who wants to think these two men have not a lot to do with each other. They do. What else do you pull out of that one?
Well, I do think that he's sort of, what is it called? The uncanny valley, I think, where it's like the psychological phenomenon that if you see something that looks almost human but not quite, you have like a visceral reaction to get away from it. And it's theorized that it might be to keep people away from like corpses, as like a, prevention of disease kind of evolutionary tactic that has come about. So I think that might be kind of what the Tick-Tock man is referring to here, is that he looks almost human, but there's just something that is just wrong, and he doesn't know exactly what, but he knows that it's bad.
Very bad. This beast that looks like a man. It's scary. And he is again. Go ahead.
Oh, just not in any way human, despite looking like a man. He can tell that at first glance.
Yeah, that's important to pull out for sure. He continues to be that trickstery, everything's a joke kind of energy here. And it's interesting how he gives his name not as Flag, which we would expect based on the tie-ins to The Stand, but as Richard Fannin, same initials, which we see those initials showing up in King's work again and again and again. If you see the initials RF, this is a bad guy, unless you read the Gwendy trilogy and then it gets a little weird. But otherwise, RF is like bad news.
Yes. And I will say, so like in prepping for this, I reread the epilogue for The Stand. This is the uncut version. So I don't remember exactly when the uncut version came out.
91.
I know that it was a little bit different. And so I think that it had come out when he had written this, but I'm not positive. Do you remember if he was?
I think it was 1990, and this was 1991. So I think so.
Okay, yeah. So in the epilogue, he at first, when he like dies and wakes up in a new world, he does not remember who he is, and then as he's like sort of interacting with these like tribal people, he decides that his name is Russell Faraday, which again is RF, but like I think it's one of those things because he like will wake up in a new world with sort of amnesia, and then as he goes on will pull out bits and pieces from his past lives. So I think that that's like the RF is like he's decided whatever RF name comes first is close enough.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about because it could also be different, the man in black on different levels of the tower. So in different dimensions in the world next door, he's, and we see that thinny showing up in Wizard and Glass, which is dividing those worlds. So it's like on this side of the thinny, he is Randall Flagg, and on this side of the thinny, he's Richard Fannin.
Yeah.
A stranger, a new name yet again, and he doesn't even know why. And he says that's not exactly right, maybe. So he doesn't really know where it comes from.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think, because we don't really get an origin to why he starts doing that, because even when we get into more of his background, he was originally Walter, right?
Yeah.
As a kid? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't have anything to do with Griff.
Correct. Right. It was Walter O'Paddock, I believe.
Yeah. And then it became Walter O'Dim as he started doing magic. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's the end of that exchange that we get more information from about who this is. So now we have Richard Fannin in the fray. We pulled out a part where Roland is telling Eddie and Susanna about his hypnotism trick. Do you want to read that excerpt?
This is Roland speaking. He says, "I hypnotized the boy who wasn't there," he said. "I did it with one of my shells. It's a trick I've known for years, and I learned it from a very unlikely source, Martin, my father's court magician."
That, I don't remember when I read that for the first time that it did much, and maybe not even the second time or the third time, but at some point I read that line and I thought, he learned that from Martin. So we only know the little bit that he shared about Martin seducing his mom and the scene in the bedchambers, but that's it. We don't have any other interaction between Roland and Martin. But this tells us that there was more to that relationship.
Yeah, and I do find it interesting. I'm currently in the middle of annotating Wizard and Glass, so that's sort of things keep popping up as you read more. And in it, Jonas is doing the flipping of like the bullet and stuff, and it's referred to as an old gunslinger trick. So it's interesting that Roland learned it from Martin, but it's also known as a gunslinger trick.
Yeah, that's right. Not from his father. So, and so we just have to wonder, like, was this just a casual exchange, or was he receiving some kind of tutelage from Martin?
Yeah. Because we don't really know, and we also, as far as I'm aware, Cuthbert and Elaine don't really have any sort of like magic like that. I mean, Elaine sort of has the shine, or I guess it's called the touch or the gift in this series, but it's alluded to being the same as the shine. But they don't have any like quote unquote tricks that they can do like that. So it's interesting that like Roland was apparently getting this potentially special instruction that other gunslinger like apprentices weren't getting from Martin.
Yeah, so much in there. And then we think about, well, Martin knew how to do this, and Jonas. So those are the only other two people that we see doing it who are big baddies. And when Roland does it, he hates himself and just has this really dark black thought about how awful this thing that he's doing.
Yeah. At least in the unrevised Gunslinger, he refers to it specifically as rape. Yeah. And it also, directly mirrors the Man in Black, like raising Nort from the dead, kind of as like, even though it's not as disturbing or, not as, I guess, dark, it is still something that is seen as this very violent sort of thing.
Totally. So it's so amazing that just that one line, once you've read this book a few times, you're like, wait, wow, what? It is a very unlikely source, but that's all he says about it. And we get nothing else from Stephen King, and he just leaves it up to our imagination to think on that. So we thought on it, Stephen King. We did. Okay, last thing from the Wastelands. This is Roland telling Eddie and Susanna how time and space are stretching out and things are different than they used to be. And he's talking about his journey leading them up to how he got there, just filling in all the blanks from his backstory. I didn't walk, but rode most of that distance on horseback, Roland said. I was slowed up, shall we say, every now and then, but for most of that time, I was moving away from John Farson, who led the revolt which toppled the world I grew up in and who wanted my head on a pole in his courtyard. He had a good reason to want that, I suppose, since I and my compatriots were responsible for the deaths of a great many of his followers, and because I stole something he held very dear. So this is in the Wastelands, alluding to the grapefruit that's going to come in the next book. So Stephen King already had some idea that he was going to tell that story. But what do we learn about, or what do we learn? We don't learn anything. What do we learn Roland thinks about John Farson?
Clearly separate from Martin. Not the same person, even though, in the Gunslinger, revised at least, it is alluded to him being the same person. The good man / John Farson / Martin are sort of interchangeable depending on what character is speaking. So nobody seems to know, but Roland believes that they are separate people.
Or at least he's referring to them separately there.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Anything else from the Wastelands? So at the end of the Wastelands, we have Richard Fannin, so new name for the Man in Black, who Stephen King told us that Walter was the ageless stranger. And then Richard Fannin says, some people have called me the ageless stranger. And Roland, this came later, but Stephen King said he's that hoary cripple, and then Roland said the hoary cripple was Joe Collins. But that's not until book 7, but I thought it was relevant at that time. So
yeah,
not a lot of clarity at this point.
Nope. It still seems like they are all like a giant Venn diagram with multiple different circles, and in the middle they're kind of all the same person, but depending on what circle you're in, they may or may not be those people.
Yes.
So it's very confusing, and I think it's meant to be confusing. We're not meant to fully know, like beyond a shadow of a doubt, but it is fun to try to pull the threads and see which parts are true and which parts are like rumors in world and midworld.
I think so too. I'm wondering if we should stop now because
Wizarding Glass has a lot.
Wizarding
Glass has a lot.
I think this is maybe a good stopping point at 50 minutes because this could easily take us a half an hour to get through Wizarding Glass.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I think that's a good episode. We only got through 2 of the 3 books, but I don't know anybody else, Ash, that is taking as deep a dive as we are taking into this material.
Yeah, I mean, especially with regard to the Man in Black, at least, we're trying to pull apart like every single reference, and it's a lot, but it's so much fun. I'm having a great time.
This is what I love to do, and I know that I met you because you also love to do it, and there's somebody still watching this video at the 52-minute mark who also is like, oh damn, I never thought about that, and I love it too. If we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it, and it's gonna take as long as it takes. There's gonna be as many episodes as there needs to be, so that when you're wondering what are the differences, I'm gonna say, well, we can tell you because I don't. But here's the thing to do about the series: we'll get done and then we'll find something else because there's always a new thing when you read this series. I'm always having my mind blown by something hitting differently or making me think about, oh, well, maybe we didn't consider that particular angle, which is why people who reread this series love it so much, I think, and do by the time they've read it once, twice, the third time, they start pulling apart those little threads to see where they go. And so we just hope that we're going to make them anyway. Even if nobody watches, we're still going to make them because we have a good time doing this. But if you are watching, if you're still here, thank you so much. We're going to keep going. I am not sure. We'll at least do Wizarding Glass in the next, maybe Wizarding Glass and Wolves of the Kala. And the next one, we'll just have to look at the notes to figure that out. Stay tuned. Anything else before we kind of wrap up with where we're at?
I mean, I think just keeping in mind that at this point, we've got Martin / Farson / the good man / Walter / maybe the ageless stranger /
Flag.
the Man in Black / Flag, / Fannin / Faraday. It just keeps going on. Just try to keep all of those different aliases in mind as we go into the next video.
That's right. All right, friends, thanks for tuning in. Until we meet again, may you have long days and pleasant nights.